All right, right now I'm here with the one and only Indonesia's prominent economist and environmentalist, Professor Emil Salim. Good afternoon, Professor.
Yeah.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Wow, okay, great. Thank you for joining me to discuss the future of sustainable energy in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And also, thank you for giving us the opportunity to interview you at your house.
Yeah, thank you.
What a privilege we have.
Thank you.
Okay, and Professor, in late 50s to early 60s, you were among the few Indonesian students who furthered their study in UC Berkeley in the United States. Of course, at that time, Indonesia was still young. As you know, we got the independence in 1945. So I want to know what is the impression of the international community about Indonesia, perhaps during your interactions with the international community at that time?
Yeah. Just remember that we were in 1959, and in that period, Indonesia was in a situation where we are launching, President Sukarno was launching an attack on the West. Malaysia issue, the issue of the colonialism, capitalism, and so on. President Sukarno wanted to develop a new world, to build a new world, which is different than the prevailing at the time. And you must remember at the time, the political situation, the communist countries against the capitalist countries were in a strong fight. Vietnam War was there, Cold War was there, and so on. So everything was looked into you and I, either you are with me or you are against me. It's like that. Now Indonesia wants to follow an independent policy, neither communist nor capitalist, which is rather unusual. But anyhow, the world was at that time very different. We were studying in the United States in a very difficult time, recognizing that the world is changing. Somehow, not entirely moving to capitalistic country, but also not to the communist country. But what is it? So, Indonesia, President Sukarno was fighting for an independent, the new world, which is its own trap, own road, neither communist nor socialist, and so on. Anyhow, in Berkeley, University of California, I was then studying in a situation where I want to know what is the world going, in what direction is the world going, if it is not neither capitalist nor communist. So, the institutional arrangement of a nation, how will the nation organize their economy? Not allow the capitalist way, but either not the communist way. What is this middle way? That was something that attracted me very much. And I looked, studying to the country like Sweden, the Sweden economy, the cooperative society economy, a different economy than what is usually known as the capitalistic or the communistic country. But it gave me an opportunity to learn that the world is changing, and in what direction, I didn't know yet. So I was searching, where is the world going? But more important, where should Indonesia going? It was a very exciting period of study in which emotionally I was involved in knowing where should we go in Indonesia. Certainly not communist, because we were just out of a situation in which we have a negative experience of communism, but also not like necessarily go to the capitalistic. But what is this in between? And that influenced the way I study economics in the United States. I try to understand how could be an economic development with an institutional arrangement which is a mixture of the two, capitalistic and socialistic.
I see.
And that started then the whole study, knowing that economic development is not only technical issue, it's not only an issue of investment, of employment, of inflation, not only that, but behind the economics in the changing development pattern, there is a society, there are human beings. Mm-hmm. Who are they? The social capital. Capital is not only capital in terms of machinery, finance, and so on, but also human beings. Right. These are also capital. Their minds, the spirit, the emotions, and so on. So development is more than just a matter of investment, inflation, export, import, but it has to do with what the man behind the gun, the society behind the development efforts, where do they want to go or where should they go? Searching for that answer, in the process of development, I came then involved in sustainable development, which is then not only in economics, but a mixture of economics, social, and environmental development. The three combined into one. Mm-hmm. That opens my mind and pushed me fully to like to understand what is this type of triple track economic, social, and environmental development.
Okay. Okay.
And I had the opportunity to be involved in the debate, negotiation, conferences, and so on, where suddenly I find out that the problem of development that I was struggling with is not only mine. There were many friends who are also struggling with the same issue. Mm-hmm. So we are then conversing, conserving, and discussing where should it go. The common denominator is that we start from a developing country, poor country, low income, no growth, no so on. How this particular low income country could then be advanced into a process of development that makes the country, but also the people, more humane, like not suffering poverty, lack of food, suffer disease and so on, but a human being that is worth to live in the world. Yeah. And that comes then the ideal of focusing on the human being and the human being that creates the social capital, and the social capital add to the physical capital, but then this physical capital should also take into account the way nature is being involved without destroying the nature. So it was a very mixture of very many things that excited me, because it's not the normal economic development which we know, finance, inflation, employment, export, import, and all things. It is more than that. And getting into that direction makes me feel excited to find new answers to a lot of problems in my mind.
The best way for Indonesia at that time, yeah?
Yeah. But I don't know the answer. That's the problem. I know the question, but I don't know the answer. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to be engaged in International World Council of Environment and Development. And we took the trip throughout the whole world, so Africa, Asia, Latin America, and so on and so on. And that opened my eyes. The world is not one. The world is diverse. So don't think as if the world is one entity and the way of thinking and looking to the issues are similar. Asia thinks differently than Africa or Latin America and so on. So the differentiation, and there comes then in my mind this Bhinneka Tunggal Ika thing.
Unity and
the
diversity.
Diverse. It's not only Indonesia diversity, but the world is also diverse. And getting in touch with people in the very part of the world, looking to the ways they live and the condition of the world in which they live, then you realize the world is not one. The world is diverse. That brought me to the logic that development should not be top-down, but should consider bottom-up, because the people in Africa, way of thinking, culture, heritage, knowledge, and so on, history, are different than us in Asia, different in Latin America. So don't think that the world is as if it is a one entity. No, we are diverse. But that logic, that understanding, that experience in the world after 3 months, we take a trip and so on. When I brought it to Indonesia, when I had the opportunity to be an official and then had the opportunity to see Indonesia, then I realized Indonesia too is not a solid entity, one, but a diverse country.
Correct.
So the way you should approach in Papua should be different in Maluku, should be different and in Aceh or Tamanuli. So there's this diversity. But the common denominator of all this, the world, the diversity of the world, and the diversity in the nation is, the common denominator is they want to be a human being which has an identity. I'm Indonesian. I'm from Papua. I'm from, and so on. With an own identity, with an identity that speaks with pride, yeah, that I'm an Indonesian, I'm not the same as you, Latin American, because I have my culture, I have my history, I have my people, my genetics, my blood, and so on. But also, I am a man. And as a man, a human being, and you as a human being, we should then work together, but understand that you and I can be different.
Right.
And yet, with that difference, we should work together. The point now is that when you look to the natural resource, the way of looking at natural resource could be different. One point of view is you explore nature, you exploit the nature, and with an attitude, I use this nature for me, for my benefit, for my children, for me. I are the main subject, and nature is then subordinated to my needs. The consequence is that I look to nature as a subject to be exploited and exploit this resource without realizing that that resource is not my creation, it's God's creation. And therefore, that resource must have also a benefit for the generation after me.
Right.
Because after me, there are other generations coming up. So then comes the idea of sustainability. Sustainability means here you have the resource, use this resource, yes, but please after you use resource for your benefit, leave the resource with the ability to support the life of the future generation. So resource becomes a flow concept. Resource becomes not only, it's mine, I take all the wealth from the soil for me and leave holes in the land, in the soil, for people, for the next generation. No, it's wrong. It should be that you exploit the resource, keep in mind that that particular resource should have still the capability to raise the revenue, to raise the income for your future generation.
Right.
So that the development becomes a flow, stream. And here's a resource that the stream satisfies my generation, but also next, my children's generation, next, my grandchildren's generation. So that flow concept, the same resource. Why? Because the world, the earth, is only one.
Right.
We don't have a second earth. We don't have a second planet. So this planet, we should exploit, use this planet for a generation coming, future generation as well.
Right. Professor, in relations to that, Professor, previously you held key positions in the government. You were the first environment minister of Indonesia, and you are also an economist, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, these two sectors, the economic sector and environment sector, sometimes to a certain extent, they don't get along. So my question is that, how do you strike a balance between these two sectors when making a decision or policy so that the economic development will not put environment at stake?
Yeah, so I'm from West Sumatra, yeah, and I'm educated by my parents, along the kind of the custom and the culture of Minangkabau. My mother told me that nature as such, yeah, the nature is there to teach you. Alam takabang jadi guru. Jadi nature is, you live in nature, but that nature is also your teacher to teach you. Of course, I don't understand to teach me what. But then my father brought me then, he is one working in the public works. So when he goes, we were in South Sumatra, to the countryside, he brings me along and so on. And there he shows me, look, he said, yeah, when you want to build a road, yeah, find out the elephant track. I said, why elephant track? Because the elephants are walking together and they are walking along a path that they know, and if there are many elephants walking on a path, that particular soil beneath that path must be strong. Meaning solid for road development. So, alam takabang jadi gudus, nature teach you, learn from the nature. Why are the elephants walking here and not here? Because here the soil is solid, and if an elephant walks, it's not one or two.
Correct.
There are many. So the solid, and he was working in the public works. So he just followed the logic. If that is the way of the soil of the elephants walking, then that particular type of area must be solid for road development. And there I look to the environment not as a subject, but as an object, not as object, but as something, as a living entity.
Yes.
There's a meaning. Why the monkeys, why are they making noise, something noise, yeah? They make noise
They're hungry.
because stomach are full. They've eating. The dinner after past. So the stomach is full, they're happy, they make noise, she sings, so to speak, and so on. But what does it mean? My teacher, my father told me, if you go then to the place where the monkeys are, and they are singing, or they are making noise, yeah, then look to the ground, to what kind of fruits did they eat. So watch what is the food, what is the fruits that they eat, and the fruit that the monkey eats can also be consumed by human beings. So, when you are somehow in the forest lost, my father told me, just follow the noise of the monkeys. And where the noise of the monkeys are, there is food. So, and there are many stories.
Lessons
but
from
what that I learned, then I learned really that nature is a living entity.
Right.
Nature is not dead. It's a living entity. So lingkungan hidup, living environment, is correct. Nature is a living entity, and we must learn from nature.
Right.
And therefore comes up biology, comes up biodiversity, and so on, all related with nature. How to develop the way we should develop a nation while the nature should still be able to survive.
Yeah.
Of course, you need roads, and therefore you have to cut things. But cut it in such a way that you still allow the forest still to grow. So how to develop sustainably, that you maintain the ecosystem to function.
Professor, Indonesia hosts G20 this year. And one of the priority issues of Indonesia's G20 presidency is to focus on the transition to sustainable energy.
Yeah.
High-ranking officials, NGO,
Yeah.
experts, all the relevant field, they know about sustainable energy.
Yeah.
But for the general public, it's not fully understood what's the impact to our lives. So could you tell us the meaning and the importance of sustainable energy?
Yeah. So the principle, as I mentioned, the resource, you use the resource, but maintain the ecosystem to be intact so that you can still go on living. Now, what's the problem in area where you have coal mines, where you use oil and so on? You dig hole, but you don't restore the nature.
Yeah.
So the consequence is the people are suffering. Suffering because the hole is there. But number two, then the coal is being used to burn for electricity and so on.
Yeah.
But the way they burn the coal is releasing carbon dioxide, CO2, while there is a system of carbon capture storage. So the technology is there. Okay, you use the coal for inner energy, use it for energy, but when the energy is burned, coal is burned, it releases CO2, carbon dioxide. Capture the carbon dioxide. Capture, put it back in the soil, storage. The technology of capture, carbon capture storage. Why not use it? So that you have the resource, you have the electricity, but you keep the nature clean. You don't destroy the nature. It can be done.
Okay. Professor, based on your observations so far, what's your view on the progress of sustainable energy in Indonesia? Are we on the right track now, or?
The track is there, but the movement is lacking.
Ah, okay.
So, Indonesia is in the equator. equator, yeah? The sun shines vertically, boom, yeah? Then Sumatra, then to Pontianak, and then to boom, yeah? We are not using solar energy for electricity. Australia is using it. Well, Australia is not vertical under the sun. Australia used it. Why are we not using it? Why are we using coal or oil, which dig holes and create carbon CO2? We have wind. We are an island economy. We have the sea. We have the wind. We are not using the wind for power. We are not using the wave of the sea for energy. We have nature, but we are not using nature for energy. Why?
So Indonesia, actually, we have sufficient sources for the
More
sustainable.
than sufficient. And it's free. Solar energy is free. We don't have to pay.
In relations to that, Professor, what can be done to shift people's minds to switch to sustainable energy? Because we've been using fossil fuels.
Of course.
Yeah.
Those that are able to enforce change is the government. Is the government willing to promote solar energy, energy from the sun, energy from the wind, energy from water, seawater, energy from biomass, energy and eggs? There's a lot of source of energy. Why can we not promote a multi-sector source of energy that is freely available in the country? It requires foresight.
Yeah.
It requires wisdom that you want to develop a country without destroying the country, maintaining it through sustainability. So I'm happy that Pak Joko Widodo, as chairman of the G20, take the initiative to say Indonesia wants now to move into renewable energy. And now, coal must be cut.
Under the Paris Climate Agreement, Indonesia commits to reducing carbon emissions by 29% by 2030 and 41% with international cooperation. What's your view on this ambitious new target? What steps can be done to accelerate the implementation of this target?
As I mentioned earlier, we have plenty sources of clean energy. The sun, the wind, the waves, the sea, the biomass. We are very rich in the renewable clean energy. The problem we face, and I think faced by most developing countries, especially now, when the 2020 COVID erupted, it is more than just a COVID disease. It destroyed the ability for studying for the youth. Suddenly, you have to work from home. Suddenly, you have to learn from home. Suddenly, you cannot go to school.
Yeah.
Suddenly, and so up until now, my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, cannot go to school.
Right.
So what does he lose? The ability to socialize with his group. So what does COVID mean? Take distance. Use name. Avoid contact. Socialization for the youth is missing. Normal schooling is missing. Normal lecturing is missing. So 2020 generation, education, not normal. 2021, not normal. 2022, not normal, and so on. This generation not only lose the ability to learn, but also the ability to live together in a society. So, my point is that our brain power development, because of this, the hampering, the hindrance in this education, because education becomes not normal, we are losing a generation to allow them to study science and technology. What does it mean? When we face the future of uncertainty in climate change and so on, the way to solve this problem is through science, technology, engineering, mathematics, humaniora. The world history shows that the development changed from horsepower to steam power, from steam power to electricity, and so on, by science. So when now we face now, world is changing now. Our generation must face this change. In 2050, 2045, must change this with science and technology. Paris meeting is worried that in 2050, the world climate will increase by 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius over the pre-war, pre-industrial level.
Right.
2050. How do we cope with this problem? I'm not there anymore.
Right.
And what is the key to cope with this? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, humaniora, which is now, due to conflict,
It's
being hampered. Can you imagine why I'm worried? If my grandson is not educated well because of this COVID, how will he face the 2050? Therefore, please, there will this meeting, G20 meeting and so on. My concern is not only personally my concern, but all parents of the world. All parents of the world have children, have grandchildren. All because of COVID cannot have a normal education, normal work from home, study from home, all these kind of things.
everything from home.
No socialization.
So what's the ideal solution at the
That's
moment
why
then?
what I want now is, please, leaders of the world, don't think only about 2050 in terms of climate change, but also in terms of how do we help, learn, teach the generation that has to face that world. When the Marshall Plan injects capital for industrial development, and so, why not now inject for human development? The human development and the developing country are suffering because of COVID, because of no facility for electricity, telecommunication, of working, learning from home. We don't know how long this COVID will last.
Right. And Prof, moving on, how optimistic are you about how optimistic are you about the future of sustainable energy? Are you optimistic?
I know sustainable energy is possible because we are living in a world with plenty of sustainable energy. equator, sun, sea, wave, wind.
So
We are
many.
blessed. We are blessed with this sustainable energy resource.
Yeah.
The only question I ask, why are we not using it? Why are we dependent upon coal and fossil fuel?
Okay. Professor, this is my last question. We're back to the G20. What do you hope to see in Indonesia's G20 presidency in terms of concrete actions in the economic sector and the accelerations of the sustainable energy?
Yeah. One is this time G20 must really push that the renewable, that the Paris Agreement can be achieved. Climate change is a global concern, must be attacked with global responsibility. Because if the climate is not controlled, if we don't reach the net zero emission, net zero means the positive and the negative saved out.
Yeah.
Net zero. If that is not being reached, and if we continue create CO2 and raise the climate, the world will sink. You see. Really, in terms of, not in terms of words, but and who will sink mostly? Pacific Islands and Indonesia.
Yeah.
So for us, for Indonesia, this G20 is not only a matter of conference to agree on net zero emission for the sake of climate change. No, it's a matter of survival. Because our island country will suffer. Our island will be attacked by the sea level. Not United States, not China, not Europe. They are continent, but Indonesia. Number two, we are an agriculture economy. With changing climate, agriculture will be hit. So that climate change will really hit Indonesia more than United States, China, Japan, and so on and so forth. Therefore, for Indonesia, this conference is very important. And we have seen that since 1992, Indonesia consistently was fighting for environment up till now. We must continue that fight because the people that suffer because of climate change are the Indonesian people, more so than the other country. And it's the young generation of Indonesia. The young generation that I mentioned are suffering lack of education and training because of conflict. So, please, we must make this G20 meeting a success. It must be a success. Success in terms of commitment, doable commitment.
Correct.
Yeah. And not that one president can single-handedly pull himself out. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Please avoid that.
Hopefully there
repeat
will be
again.
no surprise decision at the end, yeah, Prof.
Yeah, yeah. So that this meeting is very important, and we must fight, work, and pray that this conference be successful. Because the success of this conference will be a benefit for the survival of the island economy, island nation,
All right, awesome.
and our future generation, including my grandchildren.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor, once again. Thank you so much for giving us this interview at your house. Thank you for your valuable views. And you are truly an inspiration for us especially the young generation, and
Yeah.
you've been actively contributing to the development in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and have a nice day, Professor.
Terima
Thank
kasih.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.